Hi, let's talk about fear of public speaking. One of the most common challenges people face before a presentation, before a speech at a conference or maybe a less formal situation. Speaking of conferences, event after event, conference after conference, I come across speakers who in their professional life have achieved amazing things, often run big teams, managed very complex multidimensional projects, and yet when it comes to standing in front of the camera, they feel almost instantly paralyzed, despite their years of stress management in other situations, other professional situations such as project management. So what's this thing that makes public speaking so special and stage fright such an important phenomenon and a difficult barrier to overcome for many? Well, the simple answer is all in your mind. It's all in your head. There can be many different explanations. One is your inner critic telling you, you will not do it well. You will not do it well enough. You will not live up to your own predefined standards, even if you're not attaching any specific values to those standards or giving them specific names. So it's your inner critic, it's your inner perfectionist that is telling you you will fail. And the third possible explanation is that even if we consider ourselves to be risk takers, improvisers, none of us like to be in a situation where we expose ourselves to the risk of being laughed at, to the risk of making fools of ourselves. And with public speaking situations, we see this risk as very, very high, which is why in principle, we instinctively want to avoid such situations. On top of things, public speaking, presentations, keynotes, speeches are almost always being recorded. And that means if we fail, it will be available for everyone to watch and laugh at us. That's the way our brains make us think about this situation in the first place. So today, after yet another conference where I felt it was a challenge for many speakers to actually cope with stress, I want to leave you with a couple of tips. First of all, we're lucky because we live at a time where we no longer need to pay a lot of money for expensive, flammable, celluloid tape in order to record anything. We can simply use a smartphone in the safety of our homes to record things, to see how it works and watch it and ask ourselves what could be improved and how we should improve it, what to change about the structure and style, if it looks fake or authentic, if it feels informative or fluffy. So we can do all these things on our own without any formal training involved. So tip number one, the most important tip of all, would be practice. Let it roll, turn on the camera, speak to it or don't speak to it. Keep silent, just let it roll. Get used to this potentially hostile situation where you're forced to use your imagination by talking to a piece of glass, essentially. Tip number two is linked to tip number one. Overcoming this mental barrier where you're actually talking to a piece of glass is an imagination exercise. You need to practice your imagination in that sense that talking at a conference, even if it's an online conference where you're talking to the camera in your screen, is not exactly natural. It's not exactly what you're used to at conferences where you interact with other people. So you need to use your imagination in ways that makes the experience less hostile to your mind, to your heart, to your brain. So one thing you could try and imagine is that think about the purpose of your speech. Why are you talking to those people? Why are you presenting? Why are you delivering a speech? It's probably because you want to share some kind of practical experience, some knowledge, some know-how. And that in itself has a lot of good intention behind it. So why don't you just give a little smile to the very idea that your intentions are good, and if you're dealing with reasonable people at the other end of the spectrum, they will appreciate your intentions above everything else. Because this world of online conferences, hybrid conferences, is so new, so stressful for many, you need to give yourself a little time in the sense of the real or semi-real or almost real experience of what it will be like. So switch on the camera recording. Even if you don't start talking, bring yourself around to feel more comfortable in front of a camera with the recording button switched on. This is very important, not just switch on the camera, switch on the recording button to create this artificial pressure on your mind so that you feel it's happening. I must be talking now. I must be saying something now. Otherwise it's wrong. It's a failure. It's not. Let it roll. It doesn't cost you any money. Use your smartphone, use any device you want. Just make sure you keep recording. Now, how often do you watch silence comfortably? In public speaking, a lot of people think, sometimes for all the right reasons, because of what they have experienced in real events, is that silence is always a problem. Silence is synonymous with failure. When someone stops speaking, it either means something is not working or that they have just forgotten what they wanted to say next. It's not always like that. You really need to learn silence and understand the power of silence even. And you don't need to consult a trained actor to understand that. You just need to understand the borderline where your own silence becomes a little bit more comfortable for you. So just slow down, stop talking. Now, even for me, after hundreds of conferences and debates, it feels a little uncomfortable to stop talking at this point, because after I have pressed the record button, I feel I must be continuing to talk to you. But why not stop? Just for a moment, so that it doesn't become weird or creepy in any way. But you see, the experience is not natural for us. It takes some practice to get used to silence. Even though no one is watching this video, I can just stop the recording and start over, record a new one. So I'm not sure if I will use this version, if I will use the very first version I'm recording, or whether I choose to record another one, have enough patience, time, whatever. But the tip here is get used to silence. Give yourself a little more time to think on the stage. It's not a sin when people actually experience you thinking. Silence and being slow is not equivalent to saying that you're not prepared enough or you're not well prepared for the presentation. Preparation, no surprises there. Preparation and rehearsing. If you respect your audience, if you're talking to a large audience, if the topic you want to talk about matters to you and hopefully your audience as well, then there are different ways to show this respect to your audience. One is to dress well, of course. If you dress elegantly, that's a signal you respect your audience, especially at a formal conference. More important tips and signs of respect would be prepare. Because by not preparing, if you're too confident already, if you feel you can talk about it for hours because it's your job, you're disrespecting your audience effectively. If you're wasting your audience's time, even a minute, and if you have an audience of 1,000 people sitting in front of you, wasting 1 minute of their time is a sign of disrespect, isn't it, when you think about it? Because why should you in the first place? They have committed, they trust you will share the best of your knowledge with them. They have arrived at this conference, sometimes they have paid quite a lot of money. Perhaps one of the most important tips I want to leave you with today, if not the most important one, is a popular misconception that some people are born with extraordinary on-stage skills, whereas others are doomed to failure, doomed to make fools of themselves in public speaking situations. Complete nonsense. And a very easy excuse. I could give you dozens of examples of people I've worked with in individual public speaking training, which normally takes just one day, 7-8 hours, where at a stage where we started, I would be dealing with someone who was very shy, lacking in confidence. But once you overcome this psychological barrier and make someone look at things differently, pay attention to things that they are not used to seeing, and adjusting their style, structure, way of working on a public speech, a lot changes. So, once again, don't fall for easy distinctions, too easy distinctions, like some people have talents, others don't. It may be the case that if you have strong barriers, you may initially practice a little more, or you may work on your structure a little harder. You may do a lot more research to become a more creative public speaker, more convincing public speaker, to really understand how to get there. But that's all there is to it. So the more you practice, the more you rehearse, the better public speaker you eventually become. It's really as simple as that.